It has been long awaited. The summary, the tale, the myth. Oathbringer. It's the Oathbringer summer, everybody. People have been hounding me for so long to get this video to them. I'm very excited to do so. Obviously, I waited to be close to Rhythm of War's release because, you know, algorithm, money, my career, but also because it's genuinely pretty difficult to do these summary videos, and I wanted to work on other types of production for a long time. And I'm happy to say I didn't even have to do this myself. Murphy Napier, the wonderful booktuber extraordinaire and the runner of like my sister channel, is going to be handling certain sections. So laying out how this is going to be, if you look in the description down below, various characters, sections of Oathbringer is going to be broken apart. I will be covering DALINAR, she will be covering KALADIN, ADOLIN, and SHALLAN, and I will be doing some side characters, as well as the final battle, which I'm really excited to get through here. It's going to be a good time. Before we get into this though, I do want to remind you this is a summary of a tome. I had to condense an insane amount, and I'm sure Murph did as well, so please excuse if we forget any information or if some of the stuff even is a little bit inaccurate, because we're not going to be perfect. This is quite the undertaking, and if people want to add any corrections in the comments down below, I would appreciate you doing so. We did our best. Enjoy the ride. Also keep in mind, Murph and I are going to go through this basically chronologically twice, so you're going to hear of the fall of KALADIN 2 times, and use that to kind of orient yourself on when exactly things are happening in comparison. You can often see connections if you pay attention. So yes, you'll essentially be going through this story multiple times due to the fact that we're doing different characters' POVs in that way. It's just a lot simpler and cleaner this way. Buckle up, get ready, let's go ahead and summarize the third book in the Stormlight Archive, Oathbringer. DALINAR kicks off this first book by going into a high storm vision. He can pretty much select and choose which one he experienced now because he is a full-on Knights Radiant, and he is exploring them with the Storm Father. Basically, these visions are his own personal little Netflix. He can just skip down them dare through. In this vision, DALINAR concludes that KALADIN will not fall due to the high storm,
but something much worse.
He stays in this vision longer than he ever has before, and he witnesses a figure with 9 shadows emerge. This is the Sprin of Odium, called the Unmade, because, you know, dramatic name. He awakens from the vision and promises to unite the nations against the threat that is to come, but he is also then immediately told about the fact that, hey, your boy Sadeas, he dead. At the scene of the murder, we come upon ADOLIN, who's kind of like pondering the fact that he just murdered Sadeas, but DALINAR arrives and takes the lead, promising all in attendance, many high powerful figures, that he will be a uniting figure to them, he says over the corpse of his friend. But from here we're going to cut way into the past, and this is going to happen a lot here in DALINAR's story because we're kind of unraveling how he came to be known as the butcher he is, yet seems to be just kind of such a genuinely good guy. But in the furthest back timeline jump we see DALINAR at a siege of a city, and he is just massacring people left and right. Very into it, happy to be doing so. This guy likes murder, to the point where an assassin tries to specifically kill him, and DALINAR is so impressed by the bow shot, he goes, "Hey, want to work for me? I like good killers." And the guy's like, yeah. So DALINAR recruits the person sent to kill him, because that's his style. Back in the present, we see DALINAR and Navani getting a little hot and heavy. Now, of course, this is a little because she's his brother's widow. And to solve the problem, DALINAR's like, hey, why don't we just get hitched? That'll make it less weird. Except, does it though? And the Stormfather himself marries the two because DALINAR has pull. Like right then, right there, they just get hitched. It's pretty cool. We also learned during this time that DALINAR, like, yes, he has no memories of his late wife, but like literally no memories. It's not like he's just pretending not to remember his ex-wife. I keep saying ex-wife. I mean dead wife, so. She has been removed from his brain to the point where he can't think her name, and he doesn't even know why. Old magic. We also have a little bit of beef at this time between Kadash and DALINAR because DALINAR's been like, hey, Almighty's dead, and Kadash is like, that's blasphemy, and DALINAR's like, it's true though. Quickly we cut to the past again and see that Gavilar, DALINAR's brother, is kind of actually leading away from these warmongering ways, while DALINAR's definitely just steeped in it. There's talk of like political marriages and things like this, and DALINAR's just not as into it as his brother is. But getting back to the present, DALINAR is currently trying to pull all the world's monarchs together, saying, look, we need to unite against this greater threat. The problem is, a lot of them are saying, no, DALINAR, you're just power grabbing and trying to make yourself into an emperor-type figure, we don't buy it. To solve this problem, after talking to Alethkar, Dalinar decides that he should actually be the king of Urithiru in the Shattered Plains, forfeiting his right to Alethkar to his heirs. So this kind of assuages the fear that he's trying to do like a big power grab, because he's giving up a large amount of what like his great land is just for the Shattered Plains in Urithiru. But just showing how much derision Dalinar has caused when he tries to find a sparring match, and it's hard for even to find a partner. When he does finally land one, he has a moment of shock when he actually remembers his wife's name. That whole like, it's gone, seems to be wearing away. Now we're gonna cut 31 years ago again, and we're really gonna establish just how much of like an animal of war Dalinar is in this time period. He's at an important political dinner, and he's upset because the knife he has he finds to be unacceptable to eat the meal with, and he tries to find a better knife, can't, so he walks out into a high storm. During this, he dodges a boulder and sees a strange new species that apparently like lives in the high storm. He's unable to find a knife that like necessarily is perfect for him though. Thankfully, once he gets back to the dinner, an assassin tries to kill Gavilar, and Dalinar kills that assassin, takes his knife, and then eats his dinner with it because it's an acceptable knife. And then he like agrees to marry Evie because he's an animal, and none of this fazed him. Cutting back to the present, obviously Dalinar is like freaked out by these memories returning to him, and he's not exactly sure what's happening. But Taravangian soon arrives, and Dalinar has a lot to deal with here. Taravangian is acting like a child, and the affliction that is on the man is chaotic at best. Some days he's super intelligent, others he's appearing to act like a child. It's difficult, and with him being such an important player, it's a bit strange to have someone who's genuinely the smartest person around on some days be completely useless. We're gonna cut to the past once again though, where we see Dalinar is now married to Evie, and she's not exactly okay with his animalistic killing ways. She asks him to promise not to kill in anger. Dalinar then goes into battle and does not keep this promise, massacring some of his own men in just a frenzy. This frenzy is what we know to become the Thrill, basically something that consumes Dalinar during combat. He kills the enemy ruler, but this doesn't seem to satiate him, and he even for a few minutes goes to run off and kill his brother and seize power. Horrified at what he seems to be doing, Dalinar throws away his newly acquired Shardblade and swears off ever seeking to be king for himself. Cutting to the present, Dalinar is in a bit of a sticky situation. A lot of the rulers still don't believe he's not just doing some convoluted power grab. So, right after some men from Bridge 4 bring him a book called Oathbringer, haha, it's the title, Dalinar realizes he actually has the ability to take other rulers into the visions he experiences. He tries this with Queen Finn, and it works. Definitely more amenable to aligning with someone's ideology once they can show you tangible proof. Hey, here are these godly-ass visions I'm experiencing.
Listen to me.
It's big brain time. So we're going to cut to the past once again, just a little bit after the last time we cut to the past, and it's shown that Evie is actually pregnant with their son, ADOLIN. Yay! Except their relationship is not what I would call healthy. It turns out rebellions are arising, and Dalinar is being tagged to go off and take care of them. It turns out Dalinar is actually partially responsible for this rebellion as well, because to Evie's delight, it turns out he refused to kill a child at some point that is now kind of the heir to some of the people they are dominating, and it's becoming an issue. Well, Evie is relieved that Dalinar didn't kill a child. Dalinar is excited that he gets to go kill a bunch of people. But we're going to go ahead and cut back to the present, where Dalinar, still trying to figure out a lot of things going on, is trying to decipher these visions. They're crazy. What could they mean? So many elements to them, and stay in them longer and longer. He even brings Navani and Yasna in with him. While they're in this vision, they actually come across the 9 honor blades that were rammed into the earth, and one of the blades is even recognized to be the sword that killed Gavilar. Now we get a big chunk of important information here. I'm just going to read directly. The Stormfather explains that Odium gave power to the Voidbringers, so when they were killed, they were reborn in the bodies of Parshmen. To fight this, Honor made the Oath Pact with 5 men and 5 women. After each desolation, they would return to Domination to hold back the spirits of the dead until, under torture, one of them broke their oath. The desolations came more often because it would take a shorter time for one to break. Dalinar realizes that the Madmen and Kolar is really Taln, the one herald abandoned by the other 9 to endure 4,500 years of torture before finally breaking. Oh my god, that's so much torture. That's like the ancient pyramids to now levels of torture. Dalinar continues to pull more political rivals into his visions though, and during one of these, Lift appears and tells the political rival to not trust Dalinar, and even the Stormfather is very confused by this. But don't worry, we're going to go ahead and cut back to the most engaging part of this story, Dalinar's flashbacks to 23 years ago. ADOLIN has been born, and Dalinar expresses extreme joy over the matter. He loves his son. Yay, it's good to be a daddy. Gavilar, though, asks Dalinar to go and put down these rebellions once and for all, and Dalinar agrees to do so to show a united front between the two to help unite all of Alethkar. Now, jumping forward to 18 years ago, we see that Dalinar is still relishing warfare, absolutely enjoying slaughtering his opponents. As a result, though, he has not been visiting his family enough while on campaign. Bad Dalinar. It's to the point where he hasn't really watched ADOLIN grow up, and his second son, Renarin, has not met him yet? Bad Dalinar. In a very touching scene, he goes to see his kids at one point, and while Adolin is ecstatic to see the father he looks so up to, Renarin doesn't really have much of a reaction because he doesn't know the man that's his father. And in this moment, we actually see the thrill leave Dalinar, a moment where he is pulled back to reality and he stops having this consistent, constant need for violence. Now, cutting back to the present, Dalinar, Navani, and Jasnah keep going into these visions, except during one time while they're in there, Dalinar tries to call on the Stormfather, but he doesn't come. Instead, Odium appears. Dalinar and Odium have a little chat, and when Dalinar accuses Odium of being a monster for killing Honor, Odium calls Dalinar a hypocrite. And also, Odium wants to kill Cultivation. Dalinar tells Odium, "I'm not afraid of you." So Odium shows Dalinar his true power, and maybe you should be afraid. This is a very powerful man. Creature, god, not a man. That was a wrong word. After Odium leaves, Lift appears and agrees to come to Urithiru as long as the food is good. Lift has their priorities straight. We also see through further conversations between Dalinar and the Stormfather that it actually turns out that one of the heralds is Tezim, which, cool, that's another herald, counted for. Got him. We see Dalinar continue to bring more rulers in line with his coalition. He heads to Azure, and while he's there, he actually runs into Lift. Turns out she's an edge dancer, and she's willing to work with him as well. As he's leaving, the people there actually remark, like, "Hey, you're not the animal we thought you'd be due to your reputation. This is kind of extraordinary." And something they say about the rift triggers Dalinar's mind to remember it all. And now we get into the real dark and dirty of Oathbringer. The rift was an event that Dalinar worked very hard to block out, and now it's back in full force. 11 years ago. Dalinar has been campaigning ruthlessly, putting down rebellions for his brother. Evie hates this, saying he's essentially not a part of the family. Dalinar finally caves as Evie breaks down and says, "Look, I will not campaign for 1 full year after I put down this one last rebellion of Tanlin. If I can get rid of Tanlin, I'll be with you for a year." Evie's ecstatic at this promise and continues to travel with him while he's on campaign. She begs Dalinar to avoid bloodshed if possible, and he agrees. He's going to try and avoid a slaughter if he can. And to Dalinar's credit, he really does try and avoid it. He offers Tanlin, like, "Look, surrender, or we can do a trial by champions." I'm happy for that, but Tanlin knows Dalinar would absolutely wreck his shit. And in addition to that, he still wants to put up a fight, so they disagree. There's a problem, though. A caravan was seen leaving the town they are about to siege, and in that caravan, Dalinar is told Sadeas has betrayed him, he's leaving, and he's in that caravan. So, of course, Dalinar sprints off with some of his men to figure out what's going on. Tanlin says, "If you catch that caravan, I will say this whole time I've been on your side. I was just here to bring about or expose other traitors, high princes. That way I can be brought into your circle. It'd be great. Just go take care of that caravan. It's not a trap. It's not a trap." Turns out it's a trap. Dalinar arrives there. There's some men in Sadeas' uniforms, but there is no Sadeas. Instead, they trigger an avalanche and try and bury Dalinar under the earth, because Dalinar is a monster and that's the only way you could feasibly kill him. Problem: does not kill him, not even a little bit. He pulls himself up out of the ground and starts butchering everyone around him. He kind of finally fades back into reality and finds himself just like beating a man's face in out of sheer rage. Don't mess with Dalinar. Don't you dare try and bury Dalinar. The Blackthorn does not like being buried, damn it. Things are about to get dark. Once Dalinar gets back to his men, they're amazed to see him alive, and obviously the battle is ready to go. Dalinar's pissed, and in preparation for the battle, Dalinar orders all of his soulcasters to create as much oil as they possibly can. Oh god, no. The town actually tries to surrender, but Dalinar refuses. He takes the wall and begins pouring oil all over the town, and then he lights it aflame. He is essentially purging the populace. And Sadeas is right along with him, basically complicit the entire time. In the chaos, Dalinar is viciously trying to hunt down Tanlin. He comes across a safe house he thinks the High Prince might be hiding in and just burns it to the ground without even checking. The man is on a mission. Though, soon after, he does actually spot Tanlin running to the palace trying to save his family. Dalinar catches up to him, and it goes the way Dalinar goes. He can't really fight him very well. But Tanlin begins to laugh as Dalinar says that he burned down the safe house just in the pursuit of Tanlin. Because Tanlin wasn't in there. In fact, Dalinar's wife Evie was. She actually apparently snuck into the town to try and help in some way, so Tanlin took her prisoner and put her in the safe house. Dalinar just burned his wife to death. So, in response to an attempt on his life, Dalinar has purged a populace and killed the woman who had really worked hard to try and devote herself to him. It's horrific. Dalinar, in a blind rage, strangles Tanlin to death and then blacks out. In the next morning, Dalinar and Sadeas have the records altered. They say that Evie was assassinated in a failed attempt on Dalinar's life, and they purged the town in retribution. Still not a good look in any way, shape, or form, but definitely better than what the reality of the situation is. Cutting back to the present, as these memories are coming to the top and forefront of Dalinar's mind, we see him nearly breaking. The actual reality of what he's done is excruciating. And in perfect f*** timing, it also turns out that Kholenat has fallen to the Parshendi. Cutting to just 8 years ago, Dalinar is the most feared man in all the land. The Blackthorn is known for having actually destroyed and purged a town just to bring unity and in retribution for the death of his wife. No one will mess with him. He is the end-all be-all wild dog for his brother to remain on the throne. But in reality, the actual man is a broken, drunken mess. It's to the point where his own sons and brother are actively working to hide booze from him because they know he's just broken. And then we cut a year into the future, only 7 years ago. Dalinar continues to essentially just be a broken man. He is a screaming, grieving mess, and it's to the point where Gavilar, his own son, ends up giving him alcohol out of pity, what could essentially be seen as an all-time low, and Dalinar breaks down and cries and begs for death on his son's shoulder. Cutting to the present, tone's a thing for this video. Unable to cope with the returning memories, we actually see modern current Dalinar resort to drinking. He breaks into his son Adolin's room and starts drinking some wine. He awakens after a strange vision and a half-empty bottle of wine. Dalinar now in current condition is certainly not coping well. But the most recent memory to resurface is that of his brother's funeral. Now we cut to just 6 years ago. After the funeral, Dalinar is trying to find some booze, but he ends up just finding Jasnah reading a book, The Way of Kings. She reads the entire book to him, and after the fact, Dalinar gives her a big hug. He then finds Adolin and apologizes for being such a horrible father. He also makes his intent known to follow his wife's advice known, to hunt out some of the old magic. Now cutting to the present, modern Dalinar has made a plan. He tries to bring the Parshendi leader into one of his visions so they can have a diplomatic discussion. This does not go well, predictably. Odium shows up and kind of spoils the whole thing and wants to continue the derision because that's Odium's game. But Odium does promise Dalinar peace. Hey, look, problem solved. Odium promised peace. After Dalinar destroys the world. Oops. Dalinar arrives in Thaylen City, and they're beginning to prepare for a massive battle. Except an early high storm is arriving, which, bad sign. And right before things start really getting heated, Navani and Jasnah break the news that apparently, the Parshendi are not the Voidbringers. Humans are? We are the ones who don't have a right to this land. We're the invaders. We're the baddies. We're the bad guys. To reiterate. That's a certified oopsie. This, combined with a couple other issues, is obviously causing friction within the coalition, but they have to prepare for the fact that they're about to be in battle with the Parshendi, so we gotta get going, guys! Let's cut back, though, once again to just 5 years ago. Dalinar, on his way to the campaign to go to the Shattered Plains to take revenge on the Parshendi for killing his brother, goes into some special spooky secret woods, and in these woods he actually has an encounter with Cultivation, the god, and she allows Dalinar to move on from the sins of his past by blocking out the memories of his wife and the atrocities he committed. This is essentially saying, like, look, the trauma is so severe, you're probably not gonna get over this unless I just take it from you. So she takes the memories from him, and in exchange, Dalinar is allowed to continue to grow as a person. It's a little unclear why she's so willing to do this yet.
So for my part of this video, I'm going to summarize each of my characters individually, and then once their POVs converge, I'll just do it all at once. Starting with Cal. So Kaladin starts off this book being broody, Syl starts off being cheerful. I know, it's a big surprise. Cal gets a reunion with his parents, which is a tearful, wonderful scene. Cal has to admit to his parents that he failed his mission to save Tien, and Tien did die, but they thought that Cal was dead too, so they're just thrilled to have him back. But then Cal gets a span read from Dalinar, and he is off. Cal goes to the Parshmen, and he starts to develop a relationship with them. He explains how he used to be a slave too. He helps them learn how to obtain and preserve food, and then he starts having this internal conflict. I know, big surprise, because he's grown attached to the Parshmen, and he will likely eventually have to fight them. Kaladin and the Parshmen arrive at a way stop to shelter against the next high storm, and the Voidspren, as a woman glowing yellow appears to him, asks him to fight for the Parshmen, and she will put in a good word for him. She'll speak for him. That's the way I wanted to say that. Kaladin goes back with Bridge 4 for a bit, and then he attends a meeting with Yasna and crew. Yasna and Kaladin get into a bit of an argument because Kal wants to protect the Parshmen, and Yasna says, no, they're Voidbringers, our enemies. Shallan is supposed to be a scribe. She doesn't pay any attention because she's drawing a sketch of Kal because of this whole love triangle thing where Vale has feelings for Kal, and Kal has feelings for Shallan because Shallan reminds him of his brother, and Shallan has feelings for Adolin, and actually, none of it carries over into the next book, so it doesn't matter. After the meeting, we find out that Teft has been contemplating suicide because of his addiction to fire moss. He wakes up in a puddle of his own drool. Kal and Rock help him, get him cleaned up, and are there for him. I'll come back to Kaladin. Next, we're going to touch briefly on Adolin. Adolin starts off this book. He's now in charge of supervising the influx of supplies and people into Urithiru. A messenger appears to let him and others know that there has been a murder on the 3rd floor, and this is actually a copycat of the murder that happened to Sadeas, Adolin's murder. Dalinar assigns Adolin to investigate this murder, which is quite fun, actually. Renarin tells Adolin that he's going to give up his Sureblade because it hurts him to hold, and admits that he's actually created his own kind of blade now. He admits to Adolin that he's disappointed that he's going to be a Knights Radiant now because he really enjoyed the camaraderie with Bridge 4 and doesn't want to give it up. He clasps hands with Adolin. Adolin sees a vision of himself perfected and whole. When he comes out of the vision, he realizes his hand is completely healed. I wonder what that means. We know what that means. Adolin doesn't actually play a big role in this book. He mainly is investigating these murders and developing a relationship with his Shardblade, Maya? I don't actually know how to pronounce the name of his Shardblade, but this is relevant for book 4. On to Shallan. Her POV starts off with her using Stormlight to create a 3-dimensional projection of the continent into the room. Dalinar believes that the Stormfather has helped create the vision since he can see everything in a high storm, which means that their powers have somehow merged to create something new. To do something new. Adolin offers to teach Shallan how to fight with her Shardblade. She agrees that this is important, but then she freaks out because she remembers that she used her Shardblade to kill her parents, so she ends up creating a new persona. She already has herself and Vale. She creates a new persona, Radiant, which is modeled a lot after Yasna. It's a more poised and confident version of herself. Shallan's other persona, Vale, also spends a lot of time going into bars trying to investigate these string of murders that are happening. She will get drunk off of Horneater White and then use Stormlight to sober up and then do these ridiculous intimidation tactics where she'll put her safe hand on another man's hand and then stab both their hands through, and it's really fun to watch. But anyway, she gets information through these bar crawls. We go into a meeting where Yanala is maybe how you say this person's name, is reprimanding Renarin for wanting to be a scribe because that's woman's work and she's a jerk. So Shallan reprimands her for being so cruel to Renarin. Yasna expresses disappointment that she even took her on as a ward. Shallan and Renarin go off and have a chat, and Renarin suggests just avoiding Shallan for a while, avoiding Yasna for a while, which is what gives Shallan the idea to go off with Kal and Adolin. POVs converge. Kaladin and crew fly into Kholinar. Kaladin goes ahead to scout and sees that the city's intact, but there's something wrong here. Elhokar wants to charge right in. Kaladin wants to stay back and go in undercover. Adolin sides with Kaladin. They decide to go that way. Shallan creates disguises for all of them. Kaladin, a dirty old man. Adolin, a striking young man. I just think it's funny. As they're walking into Kholinar, Elhokar tells Kal that he feels a lot of self-doubt in his own abilities and asks Kal if he'll look after his son and wife if something were to happen to him, and Kaladin agrees. While they're in Kholinar, Shallan notices that the Sprin have been altered. They don't seem right. So, once again, she goes to ridiculous lengths in order to draw them out so that she can draw them. I say once again because I'm talking about the nonsense she did in the bar. I just love her extreme character. Kal gives Shallan the king's letter to give to the soldiers, but he remarks to Shallan that the soldiers are acting weird, as is everybody else in this place. Shallan gives the letter to the guard, but the guard actually stabs her, then drags her off and puts her in a room full of rotting corpses. She has Stormlight, and she heals herself and goes and finds Kal. There's more investigations happening around here, more disguises, more bolts to the head near death for Shallan. Stormlight heals her. She ends up starting to give away all the food that she has to the people around town who are starving, who are not doing well, so that she can draw the cult's attention to her. Meanwhile, Kaladin is on patrol near the wall, and it turns out the soldiers are hearing whispers within the wall. Beard tells them not to listen to the whispers so that they won't be drawn in. The fused do attack other soldiers, but it's a brief attack and our crew aren't hurt. Vale continues making her round, giving out food. She gains the reputation of Robin Hood, Swift Sprint, but Robin Hood. And then she gets caught up in chanting from this cult. She actually gets drawn in and wants to join them, but she hears a voice telling her, Shallan, this is not your enemy, and gets drawn back out. She tells the people, stop worshiping the Sprin and go home. And then she realizes that she has this hero complex and it's causing her to be impulsive and not logical like Yasna. They all come back together and Shallan explains that she has gained information about the Unmade. She believes that there are two in the city, one that is corrupting the Sprin and one that's causing the people to indulge in excess. She plans to infiltrate the palace that night, and they all realize that their situation is pretty dire because the city is definitely gonna fall without the Oath Gate being opened. Shallan brings a wagon of food into the meeting point with the cult. They explain that they've actually heard rumors that Vale is wanting to join the cult, and she realizes that that was Wit looking out. Vale tells them that she's been hearing a voice telling her to give in to the end and embrace the time of the Sprin. They let her in. She enters a room full of glass-eyed people in a sort of trance where they're indulging in massive amounts of food, going into rooms to have sex, and they're all completely not there. She ends up getting away from the guy who's following her around. She goes into another room full of people crawling on the floor with blood coming out of their face in these demented sort of... It's a wonderful scene. You should go reread it if you missed it because it's fast, but holy cow, it's crazy. She actually is tempted to join them and wants to become like them because she's hearing the voices and she's feeling the compulsion, but Pattern pulls her out of it. She goes into... Wait, this is the room. Anyway, her shadow is pointing in the wrong direction and it's creeping up the wall. And then bells ring and she realizes the wall is under attack. Kaladin fights with a fused in the air. He keeps stabbing it with his Syl blade, but it's not being injured at all until he finally, Syl tells him to hit it in the heart. He hits it in the heart. It dies, and then he tells people, I'm here for the king, to save the city. It's implied. Shallan goes back to continue distributing food. She goes to one of the guys that she's developed a good relationship with. Grund, I think is how you say his name. She gives him the food. She goes off. She hears a scuffle. She comes back and he's been beaten and his food has been stolen. He's actually been hit really hard in the head and now he's dying. As he dies, he explains to her that actually he hates her. And they all hate her because this gang has been forcing them to wait for her supplies so that they can then beat them and steal the food. And they're forced to do this and they all wish she would go away. That creates a complex in her and now she's absolutely heartbroken that this thing she was trying to do has been hurting these people all along. She goes off, she's having a real rough time. Wit, of course, shows up. This is one of my favorite Wit scenes. It's long, I'll move forward, but he comforts her, and it's wonderful. Then comes the fight. One of my favorite fight scenes. It's long. Here's a beautiful image while I read it. Shallan and the Windrunners go off to fight the Fused. Azur and Adolin charge the palace with their small army. Shallan approaches the wrong-looking purple heart. She tries to destroy it with her shard blade, but it has no effect. She decides to try what she did before and touches it with her hand. She's swept away. Back to Kaladin, Elhokar tries to get the queen to come away with him. Meanwhile, Kaladin finds Gav huddling in a corner, being attacked by strange red Sprin. He summons Syl and stabs one of them, killing it. Syl is amazed that they have killed Sprin. Elhokar gathers up his son, and they flee with the queen. She calls for her soldiers to attack. Back to Shallan. The Sprin implores Shallan to give me your passion, and Shallan takes on many identities as the voices suggest different emotions. She hears Wit's voice tell her that she can be all of these people, and she screams for him to help. The darkness suddenly withdraws, and the enormous heart oozes away. Shallan goes into the control room and sees a strange woman in the mirror. She introduces herself as Saja Anat. Saja Anat insists that she is not Shallan's enemy and that she is no longer of Odium. but she was compelled to mess with the Spren controlling the Oath Gate, creating a trap. She begged Shallan not to activate the device. Kaladin sees his friends on both sides, fighting and killing each other. He loses the will to fight and yells for them to stop. He sinks to his knees, distraught, then remembers that he needs to get Elhokar out. Kaladin sees Elhokar holding his son. Elhokar hauntingly starts to say the words, but is interrupted when Moash runs Elhokar through with a spear. Kaladin was right there, but he froze in battle. This is huge for his character and will carry on into the next book. He halts in battle and watches Elhokar die while he's holding his son, and this carries with him. The queen arrives surrounded by black smoke and strange crystal formations forming on her body. Drei and Scar suddenly arrive and drive the soldiers away. Adolin pulls Kaladin away. Adolin looks into the city and sees tens of thousands of Parshmen in the city and the fused in the air, readying to attack. He knows the city is lost and gives the order to abandon the city and escape to Urithiru. He goes into the control room and tells Shallan to activate the entire platform. They must escape. She's hesitating because Saja Anat told her that the fused allowed them to get there to spring the trap. He tells her to activate it anyway. Shallan prepares to activate the Oath Grate. Saja Anat realizes that they don't trust her and promises to try not to kill them. Shallan engages the Oath Gate. The three of them have a brief reprieve as they're remembering things from their past and discussing their insecurities with each other. Suddenly, a screeching sound is heard. A dangerous Spren is coming. They march forward. A bunch of anger Spren are following them around because Kaladin can't control his anger. He tries to get it in check. And then Syl explains to him that she's actually bonded with someone else before. He died in battle before the Renaissance, so she survived, but it nearly broke her. Her father found her and forbade her from ever leaving the city again, or at least from leaving the city again, but she disobeyed him and left when she heard Kaladin calling for her. They board a ship. Some conversations happen. I'm gonna breeze past them because this is summary and it's already getting so long. But the most important thing that happens here is that Adolin starts seeing his Shardblade's dead Spren, Maya, and he refuses to treat her as a Deadeye. They split up to get some rations and to accomplish some things here, but the main important thing here is that Kaladin sees the Unmade and decides that he really needs to get back to Dalinar. Syl is trying to be undercover because there's a bounty out for her, but she ends up revealing herself to get them on the ship. Then they're captured and Syl is locked away. They spend a week on the ship. Shallan and Adolin end up having some heart-to-hearts, and Kaladin is pleading that Syl be let go, but the captain refuses because Syl is too young to have another bond. Syl ends up speaking into his mind, lights appear around him, and then he reveals that he's a Windrunner, and the captain is amazed that there's even a bondsmith, Dalinar, still in existence, so he agrees that he will consider helping them. Fused are gaining on them, so they end up jumping into the sea of beads. They make it to the shore to wait out the high storm, and then in order to preserve stormlight, they walk through the forest to meet up with Dalinar.
Quick clarification from where Murphy left off, connecting to where I originally recorded to, picking up with this group. They head through a forest to a point where they get to the city and see the Oath Gate with Fused guarding it, and, you know, that's where I'm going to pick up now. So just to clarify, like, I'm going to pick up that they're at an Oath Gate. They went through a forest, saw a city where it's an Oath Gate. Now they're sneaking to that Oath Gate. So just little connection there.
On to the final battle.
But cutting back to the present, we must prepare for the final battle. We are going to get into a lot of side character stuff after the final battle, but before we do that, I want to touch on some Taravangian before we even get into that final battle. Taravangian throughout the book has been sketchy. He's clearly planning big, plotty stuff, but we don't know exactly what he's going for. Though we do know he does come to the conclusion that they cannot beat Odium, and instead of trying to win, he wants to try and preserve as much as possible. He strikes up a deal with Odium, and he starts to try and work to undermine Dalinar's coalition. Smartest man in the world on some days is now against us. Or them. I shouldn't say us. I'm not a part of this. I'm a reader. That's been not even this whole video. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, I'm essentially going to be reading off the script for the final battle here, so beautiful picture, and then I can just read and we can get through this together. Dalinar watches the Everstorm approach. Enemy ships sail with the storm and arrive uncontested. Amaram begins to set up his troops between the walls and the water, and reinforcements are called for. We also see Jasnah summon her Shardblade as she is watching Renarin have all kinds of visions, and one of Renarin's visions is that Jasnah is going to kill him, so oopsie. Absolutely need to clarify why Jasnah is about to try and kill Renarin. She's been collecting sketches of all the Radiant Spren, and none of them match up with the one that Renarin's bonded to, so they assume that he actually is bonded with on Odium's side and is a traitor, and she's like, I gotta kill Renarin? Oh my god! We see Vinley, one of the leaders of the Parshendi, experience the same thrill that Dalinar once did. Now Odium arrives and begins to help the Parshendi kind of indirectly, but the Parshendi have a weapon that actually allows them to basically unleash the thrill on all of Amaran's men, give him an order, and that order is to, hey, kill Dalinar, take revenge for Sadeas' death, even though it's not really his fault, it's Adolin who, Still, they're told that, and suddenly there's a possessed, thrill-filled Amaran's army working against the city's defenses. Things just went from bad to real bad. That was bad. Dalinar even begins to feel the same thrill, but he resists it, for now. Foreshadowing. Shallan, Adolin, and Kal sneak, kinda, their way to an Oathgate and attempt to get to the besieged city to help out. Seth, meantime, watching Dalinar at a distance, wonders if he's been following the wrong people. Lift, being tasked with retrieving the stolen ruby, is having some trouble. Fused are hunting her down, and yeah, it's not looking too good. But right before she is killed, Szeth saves her, officially switching sides. That's right, the assassin in white, now one of the goodies. The siege itself, though, is not going well. Dalinar meets with Odium once again, and they agree to a contest of champions. Dalinar assumes he will fight whoever Odium's champion is, but to his shock, Odium chooses him as his champion, and the thrill floods into Dalinar, non-consensually, and the Stormfather is banished from his mind. Meanwhile, Szeth is massacring Amaram's controlled troops with Nightblood. Nightblood feasts! The ruby he and Lift have been going for now has been snatched by some Fuse, and we got a good old tussle and chase on our hands. Tussle time! Odium tells Dalinar to give him the guilt and the pain of the horrible things he has done, essentially taking responsibility due to the thrill. Odium also destroys a copy of The Way of Kings. Dude, don't destroy books, read the room. He also makes Dalinar relive the horrible purge he once committed. Meanwhile, at the Oathgate, Shallan, Kal, and Adolin have to flee. Kaladin gets surrounded by the Fused. He tries to say the next words, but is unable to. Instead, he thinks of his brother, and he falls to his knees. Syl embraces him, and the Fuse moved in. Jasnah is actually standing over Renarin at this point with her shard blade drawn, about to kill him, but she refuses to. Since Renarin's visions have actually shown her killing him, and his visions at this point have been like, oh, Dalinar is going to be Odium's champion, things are bad. This shows like, wait, no, these visions aren't true for the future. Renarin can be wrong, which means cut back to Dalinar. We see Dalinar reject Odium's offer to take his guilt and become his champion. He will not let the god take his pain. Instead, he will take the most important step a man can take. He takes responsibility for what he did. Glory Spren appear around Dalinar. The Stormfather returns to him, and Dalinar says the next oath. Dalinar admits the horrendous things he has done, comes to terms with them, and promises he will do better. Unite them. Syl senses something amazing is happening, and she tells Kal maybe it's time for someone to save him. Dalinar literally reaches his hands into the cognitive and spiritual realm and brings them together. He also hears his wife forgiving him as he does so. The Fused about to attack Kaladin are repulsed by a magnificent light exploding in Shadesmar. A glowing pillar has appeared, and Syl identifies it as Honor's perpendicularity. We also in this time see Teft say the words as well, but slightly different. He swears to protect those he hates. Odium orders his men to attack Dalinar. Amaram seems to get the jump on him, but just as he does, Kaladin stops the blow, emerging from the column of light with Shallan and Adolin. It's oh, the armies arrived on the boat scene from Minas Tirith, but, it's Kaladin, Shallan, and Adolin, which is, let's be honest, enough. All of the Knights Radiant rally around Dalinar, each given their own orders as Amaram's possessed men regroup. Most importantly, Kal gets to fight Amaram himself. It's the rumble of the guy we all hate finally being taken out by the person he screwed over. We also see Adolin is healed completely. Shallan leaves him though and draws her shard blade and light weaves an entire army for them. Adolin, being the only one without specific orders, goes to join the battle fray. Oh, Adolin, you're here to help. Szeth also finally wins his tussle and chase and gets the ruby. Yay, except no, he has to later throw it to get to Lift. Boo, he has to save Lift, but it's like worth it, Save Lift, you have to throw the ruby so the Fuse go, but you gotta go get her. Jasnah has also come into an immense amount of stormlight and fixes the entire city wall. She also casually takes care of Fused and generally takes on a prominent leadership role. Foreshadowing again. Jasnah is seriously amazing in all of this. I wish I could get more into detail, but summary. Kaladin scores a hit on Amaram's plate, cracking it. As Amaram gains his footing, the boot explodes, showing a foot covered in carapace underneath. Gross. In fact, Amaram sheds his shard plate and is fully carapace. Gross. Meanwhile, Dalinar is having a good old ponder and actually thanks Thrill for giving him the strength that it did, completely rejecting the idea it is not his responsibility for what he did. I emphasize this again because a lot of fans you see online will be like, oh, Dalinar wasn't in control, like it's not his fault. No, Dalinar specifically, the whole point of this is him being like, look, it is my fault what happened. I could have said no, but I didn't. It is my responsibility, and the whole point of his character is him taking that responsibility and moving on from it. So I really disagree with the idea that people are like, oh no, don't put that on Dalinar's shoulders that he purged the people. No, you should. That's the whole point of this. On the Parshendi side of things, Vinley is in full retreat due to Odium withdrawing, but she does get to speak the first ideal. The army itself, though, is still attacking. It's just Vinley noping out of there. Szeth now wants to get the ruby to Dalinar, but Dalinar is deep in the Thrill. Szeth does not trust himself going near that, so he passes the ruby to Lift, and she goes to give it to Dalinar. Dalinar takes the ruby and allows the Thrill into himself one last time. Kaladin is being attacked by Fused and Amaram, and just as his Stormlight is running out, freaking Rock shoots Amaram with a shard bow. Oh my God, one of the greatest moments of the entire book. For greater context, this is important because Rock does not commit violence and has just been acting as a cook, refusing to pick up a weapon. But even he, when Kaladin was in trouble and sees Amaram about to take him out, is like, I got this, hold up, I'm gonna shoot him right in the face. As red light pulses from where Dalinar is, the Fused suddenly retreat and the defenders get to cheer. Dalinar sits weeping, holding the ruby, which now is the prison of the Thrill. A corrupted Sprin that Dalinar has now captured. This obviously ends the battle, the Parshmen are in full retreat, and Amaram's men are let go of the Thrill. After the battle, we have just a few quick things. During this book, Moash kills Elokar and is asked by Hanan if he would do the same to a god. Yasna is made the queen because of her extraordinary display during everything, and the fact that she is next in line to be the queen. Szeth actually gains access to the Surge of Division, which, that is cool. And Shallan does decide to marry Adolin. Taravangian, after the battle, tells Dalinar he wants to take control of the coalition with what we know. No, stop, no. It's a bad Taravangian, because we know he struck a deal with Odium, so. We also cut back to Moash, who we see kill a crazed homeless man we previously in a cutback saw give booze to Dalinar at one point, and we now know that he's actually killing the King of the Heralds, the greatest man who ever lived, the one who endured 4,500 years of torture. So yes, the battle may be won, but there are certainly things at play that seem to be setting up a much darker future for the Stormlight Archive and Roshar as a whole. Anyway, guys, this has been a summary of Oathbringer, an intense and multiple week effort of trying to condense an entire book into just like a digestible video here for you in time for Rhythm of War. Thank you very much Murphy Napier and Jay from Captured Words for contributing to this video. Guys, both of their channels linked down below, absolutely both worth checking out, and like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here, and check out Rhythm of War. Peace.